Hello and welcome, everybody. SF Live episode 139 this morning. Thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. And in a few short seconds, we will be joined by Kevin Weston. He's president and CEO of Whitehorse Gold Corp. And we're quite excited to have him on. This is a world premiere. I couldn't find any other interviews of him online talking about Whitehorse. So I'm quite excited to pick his brain today, talk about Whitehorse. It's a new company, or fairly new company. It's only 4 months old. It's a spin out from New Pacific Metals. And I'm quite excited to be talking to Kevin in a few seconds. Also be reminded, this is an interactive format. So make sure you use either the hashtag function on Twitter using hashtag AskWHG and or the YouTube chat. And we get to your questions at the end of our conversation with Kevin, or we'll sprinkle them in if it's fitting to the conversation we're having right now. I'll keep an eye on there as well. And as a reminder, make sure to follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, hit that little bell icon, and leave a thumbs up, leave a like. And as you know, we always go live with our interviews, so make sure you hit that notification button. That way you get notified when we go live. I'm a bit under the weather, so I've been coughing a lot lately, and I really appreciate Kevin joining us. And now let me switch over to Kevin and have him introduce the company.
Yep.
Kevin,
good morning, Kai.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
With a bit of a scratchy throat, I'm generally quite good, actually.
Well, that's unfortunate, but thanks for taking the time to let us talk about our great project here.
Yeah, well, why don't you give us a quick 60 second, like 30,000 foot overview, and then we'll dive into some more details.
Okay, sure. Well, Whitehorse Gold is a relatively new company, as you said in the intro. We were spun out of New Pacific Metals, who was the last company to do any exploration on the property. New Pacific actually bought the assets of a company called Tagish Lake Gold, and they did the exploration under Tagish Lake Gold back in 2011. 2012, they put out a resource estimate, and then that New Pacific got interested in a large Bolivian silver play, and as a result, the Tagish Lake Gold assets, what we now call the Skukum Gold Project, it was no longer core to them. So the board made a decision back in late 2019, early 2020, to spin Tagish Lake Gold out into a separate entity, and that's how we became to be. We formed, the management team was fully formed in July of last year, and we worked through the summer, fall on, putting together the spin out, the new listing, and at the same time we were doing we managed to get an exploration program in last year, which led us to where we are today. While we were doing the spin out, we updated the resource estimate, and here we are today as Whitehorse Gold.
Lots to unpack in that, so I appreciate the overview there. Let's start at the very beginning. It's a brownfield site, the Tagish Lake. You bought it from Tagish Lake, or New Pacific bought it from Tagish Lake. So run us through a bit of the history there. I remember there was some production. It's an old mill site, and run us through the history of the project itself in a bit more detail.
Okay, well, the history actually on the project goes back even further. This is a large land package. It covers 170 square kilometers. And it was under the Tagish Lake Group that all of the ownership was brought together. But we have showings on our property that were discovered back in the 1920s. Remember, that's only 20 years after the Klondike Gold Rush. And there was a portal on our property that was done in 1926, and that's never been followed up on because of all the fractionated ownership. In 1988, there was a production scenario. There's a from 87 to 89, 86 to 88, I should say. There was a production scenario where the Mount Skookum deposit was mined. They produced 79,000 ounces of gold from 233,000 tons of mineralization of rock. Quite substantial grade. At the same time, they were preparing the Skookum Creek deposit for production, and then also developing and exploring on the Goodell deposit, which is also on our property. So we have 3 deposits, all with resources on this one land package. Following that production scenario back in the 80s, there were some follow-up exploration in the 90s, in the 2008, I believe it was, and then the 2011 program that was done by New Pacific Metals.
Interesting. Okay, a lot of history, and the name Skookum, of course, carries a lot of weight and history in itself in the Yukon area, obviously. Is there a reason why it was named Skookum?
The whole area carries the name Skookum. There's a Skookum
Okay.
Creek, a Skookum Mountain, and so
He
we
was one of
just
the first pioneers, maybe we should say that was
absolutely,
up
yeah,
there in the
yeah,
Yukon, right? Looking for
right.
gold. So
Yeah.
that's why, okay, I figured maybe he was involved in the discovery of the project or something like that. So,
He may have been somewhere way back. We are on Carcross Tagus First Nation tradition or territory, and it's wonderful talking to them because they all have a history with the project. They've all worked on the project at different phases from the 80s to 2011, and they all have their stories. So we learn a lot. We will learn a lot sitting down with them.
fantastic. We're going to get back to First Nations because they're quite important in the Yukon as well. But before we do that, let's catch up on the capital structure real quick of the company. It was a spin out of New Pacific Metal. So catch us up on how many shares are outstanding and maybe some of the shareholders.
Okay. Total shares issued and outstanding are 42.6 million, and that's made up of the New Pacific shareholders were granted 20 million shares as part of their shareholding in New Pacific. And I think that was a 7-to-1, approximately 7-to-1 ratio, New Pacific shares to Whitehorse Gold shares. And then we also did a private placement back, closed in November, and we issued another 22.6 million shares at approximately 30 cents to raise about $6.7 million to get us to, then that funded the spinout, that funded our exploration program and continues to fund us today as we prepare for an exploration program in 2021.
I saw you issued 22 million shares. At what price did you issue those shares, and how much did that bring in?
Yeah, we issued those shares at 30 cents. That brought in about $6.7 million. And those proceeds were used for both the purchase of the asset from New Pacific. There was a purchase price associated with that, and also to fund our exploration through 2020 and carry us into 2021 exploration.
Okay, but before we talk about purchase details and how much you paid for the project, let's talk about just major shareholders real quick. Who are the major shareholders in the company right now, and how is management positioned?
Okay, well, Silvercorp Metals is our major shareholder. They were a shareholder in New Pacific, so they were granted shares through that, and they also purchased shares themselves directly. So they retain about 27% of the company. Management directors carry about 1 million shares, and other insiders in the company control about 12%. So we've got about 40% of the company, which is fairly tightly held right now. The other insiders, most of those people, a lot of those are Silvercorp Metals officers and directors. So just by nature of being officers and directors of Silvercorp, they become insiders.
Okay, so they're actually reporting insiders then, because I've seen a couple of names I
Absolutely.
recognize, like Rui Feng and others, who
Yep.
is president and CEO of a Silvercorp as well, holding shares. So
Right.
yeah, fantastic. And
Exactly.
as management, you said management directors hold roughly 1 million shares, and you all bought in the market, or how did you get positioned?
No, we all bought at the private placement.
The private placement there. Okay, fantastic. At 30 cents, so you are
Yep.
trading at what is it? $2 already. Nice.
Yeah.
220, 226 this morning, I think I saw.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The market certainly likes the story. They like the fact that we're in a great jurisdiction. The high grade resource, high grade is king, and we certainly carry a high grade resource at close to just over 7 grams per ton gold equivalent, and our location is second to none.
we're going to get to the project details in a second, because infrastructure is also super important in the Yukon. But I just want to wrap up the capital market side, cash position, working capital, real quick. What is left
Yeah.
of the money you've raised?
Okay, so we're sitting just around $1.5 million right now, and we will obviously need to go back to the market and do a raise for this year's exploration program.
Okay. Have you put a budget together? And that's a perfect segue, by the way, to talk about exploration and the projects. Have you put a budget together yet?
Well, yeah, we're looking at around 20,000 meters this year, and we're going to focus on the Skookum Creek deposit, which is our largest resource today. But we will also advance the resources at Mount Skookum and at Goodell. Budget's going to be somewhere between $15 and $20 million. We haven't finalized it yet, and we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on details right now to finalize that.
That's quite a bit of money you have to raise. So I'm sure do you have some commitments already?
Well, we know that we're fairly confident that Silvercorp Metals is going to be there. They're going to retain their position, and certainly lots of other insiders will want to participate as well.
Okay, fantastic. Good to know. Let's dive into the project. Let's talk a bit about the historical data you have, the historical resource, and then let's dive into the individual projects themselves. And I'm going to let you dictate a bit of the timeline on the projects we're going to talk about. So maybe Skookum Creek first, as you said, that's your biggest project.
Okay, just to clarify that it's no longer historical resource. We updated the resource in 2020, so it's a current resource and it's reflective of current metal prices. Skukum Creek is the biggest resource. We have indicated already 1 million tons at 7.75 gold equivalent. And when we talk gold equivalent, we're only talking gold and silver. There are minor base metals associated with some of the deposits, but they are they've never been considered as economic to date, and we'll find out more when we go back to the metallurgical work this summer. So that Skookum in the indicated category, we've got 249,000 ounces gold equivalent, and in the inferred category, we have over 500,000 tons already. It's 6.2 grams per ton gold equivalent. That gives us over 100,000 ounces. So combined, we're looking at for over 350,000 ounces. So Skookum Creek is well advanced.
No, that's a great starting position, exactly. And so your drill plans for this year, like what kind of data are you basing on your exploration budget or plans for this year?
Well, we did some drilling last year. We drilled 4 holes, which all into Skookum Creek, and that was to validate the high grade depth at Skookum and to test the mineralization across what's been called the Portal Fault. We had great success this year. We've already put out those holes 1, 2, 3, and 4. We put out, I think, hole number 1 was just over 8 meters at 6.5 grams per ton gold and 186 grams per ton silver. Quite nice and a little wider than what we anticipated. The other holes were 6.3 meters true width and then 5.8 meters true width. All very nice widths for mining. These deposits, the lenses at Skookum Creek all sit subvertical, and at those widths will be very amenable to both mining methods. The 4th hole was probably one of the more important ones because we managed to get through what's called the Portal Dike and found mineralization on the other side of the dike similar to where the main deposits are, the main veins are. And that's shown us that, confirm that the dike is post-mineralization. And by changing our drill angles, we should be able to identify the mineralization across the dike. And that could lead us right across the valley, across the Skookum Creek Valley, over to what's called the Raka, and really open up the strike potential of the Skookum Creek.
Okay, so there has been no previous testing or anything on the other side of the Skookum Creek? Okay.
No,
and what depth are we talking? I'm just actually have the presentation open on slide 9 here on the screen in front of me because you can see the portals, the different veins. Like how deep will you have to drill to sort of hit the other side?
Well, the 4 holes we drilled this year were all in the order average about 500 meters each hole. Because we'll be doing all of our drilling this year, given the type of permit that we'll have, we'll be looking at 600-700 meter holes from where we're going to drill because we're drilling from surface.
Yeah, and you'll have to try to subvertically sort of cross-cut across that dike as well, so you'll have to hit certain depth, right?
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to do this year, and something that is going to be very beneficial, is we're going to be using directional drilling techniques. So we won't need to drill 700 meters every hole. We'll drill a main hole, and then we can come off of that hole and direct the drill bit to intercept the lenses at different elevations.
Okay, since I have the presentation right on page 9 right now, it shows a portal at the 1300 level, 1315 level. Like, what kind of infrastructure is actually still there, and what can you use? Are you actually able to walk into that portal?
We have been underground. The ground is very good. It's a granodiorite host rock with the rhyolite, the veins sandwiched in between. The ground conditions are excellent. We can get in, but we will not be using them this year. In order to go underground and start drilling, we will require a water license in the Yukon, and that's going to take probably till 2022 to obtain that permit. So this year we'll be doing it under what's called a Class 3 permit, which will allow us to drill from surface. And so we'll be drilling from surface at all three deposits, at Mount Skookum, at Goodell, and at Skookum Creek.
Do you have a timeline roughly when you plan to start drilling? What's the weather looking up there like right now?
Well, they've had good snow, good snowpack up in this Wheaton. It's called the Wheaton River Valley where we are, and we anticipate we'll be drilling it sometime in June if all goes well.
Okay, so regular Yukon season there as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned, like I mentioned, the portal and infrastructure as well. Since we're on Skookum Creek as well, talk us through the infrastructure. How do you actually get to the project? How does that look like?
Okay, well, the project itself sits, the land package sits 55 kilometers from Whitehorse by air. It's only 85 kilometers by road, and the road is maintained by the territory to within 18 kilometers of our site. So we have excellent access. We are responsible for the last 18 kilometers. So access is good. We have historical plant from the past production. It was a 300 ton per day leach plant with Merrill-Crowe finish. It's still there. Obviously, it's not in usable condition after 32 years of being shut down. But we do have some infrastructure there we can use. The shell is in excellent condition. The comminution equipment we can reuse. The leach tanks we could reuse. And there's also a disturbed area where the tailings was. So all of that's still there. At Skookum Creek, you've got the two portals, and the lower portal, the 1300 level portal, has a down ramp that goes down to 1225. Back in the 80s, they were actually preparing Skookum Creek for production. They had actually installed a flotation circuit in the plant in anticipation of putting it into production to supplement the feed coming from Mount Skookum. Of course, gold prices dropped back in '87 and made the project uneconomic. And of course, we're talking about a different dynamic then.
I quickly want to circle back to Skookum Creek because I have page 10 actually open now here in this slide deck, and it shows quite a few drill holes. So it's like I've been asking you before about historical data. Like, do you actually have all that data from Skookum Creek? Is it accessible to you? Like, how is it in your database now, and how are you using it to guide you? You mentioned a couple things like they wanted to produce at the 1225 level. So how much data can you use and reuse and maybe even use to update the resource?
Well, since we came into the project back in July, we've had a database manager doing just that, bringing all that data together into digital format. So we're digitizing all of the underground workings. We're digitizing all of the mapping. We're digitizing all the chip samples from underground. We have all of the drill hole data. Our geologists are going through the drill hole data to validate that collars are reasonable and that the dip angles are all reasonable. So we have 141,000 meters of drilling on these properties.
Perfect. That's the number I wanted to hear from you because I've been seeing all these black lines in here. Like, there's got to be data there, right?
All right. There's a tremendous amount of data, and that's what led to us to having a resource, and not to mention the extensive development that was done at Mount Skookum, because that was a mine. That was a mine that was mined using long hole drilling techniques. So there's sub levels. There's a tremendous amount of data that we have access to right now.
Okay. Let's talk about Mount Skookum since you brought it up. What type of data do you have? Like also metallurgical data? Like what can you use and moving forward, of course, and what are you going to do with the project?
Well, yeah, we have all the metallurgical data from the operating plant, so we know what the metallurgical performance was. There were gold and silver recoveries were in excess of 90% when they were running. It's the low sulfidation portion of the epithermal deposit, so it's really ideal for milling. It's straight leach, and then they had the Merrill-Crowe finish, of course, because of the high silver values. We still have access to both portals up there. We have two portals at Mount Skookum. We have two portals at Skookum Creek, and we also have another portal over at Goodell. Our geologists look at Mount Skookum, and they see potential, even though it's got the smallest resource. It's only got 90,000 tons, but it's got very high grade gold. It's got a 9.4 gram per ton gold equivalent grade for only 27,000 ounces gold equivalent. However, our geologists feel that these epithermal deposits can pinch and swell, and there really hasn't been any deep drilling done on the deposit to look for the next swelling, or following up on there's a lot of parallel veining as well, which we feel can add to our resources up there.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Goodell yet, but I want to ask first, like, why have you prioritized Skookum Creek over Mount Skookum and Goodell? Like, besides
Size.
size.
We see Skukum Creek as being our shortest path to a production scenario.
Okay.
So, we're sitting with 335,000 ounces in indicated, 245,000 ounces in inferred on the whole property, with, as I said earlier, over 350,000 of those ounces being at Skookum Creek between indicated and inferred. So, if we could grow Skookum, say, to 700,000 ounces, bring our total resource up to over 1,000,000 ounces, we feel that we'll be looking at starting to do technical studies on a production scenario.
Are you doing any technical like met work already, or have you started that simultaneously to sort of fast track that process?
We are going to this year. As part of our work plan this year, we're going to be going back to the Met Lab to start, and we have the benefit of a lot of met work that was done already on Skookum Creek. And of course, we have on Mount Skookum, we have the past production. Goodell, there's very little met work. We can't find any, as a matter of fact. So we will be starting off at Skookum Creek, looking at taking off from where our predecessors were before.
Okay. Let's talk Goodell real quick. So you brought up you don't have too much metallurgical data. Is there any other information that you're working with? Give us an update on Goodell real quick.
Okay. Well, Goodell is probably might have the greatest potential. On the west end of Goodell, there was a portal put in the 80s. On the east end of Goodell, there were portals put in back in the 60s, I believe it was, and it was a small antimony play. And the distance between those portals is 5 kilometers. There's a 5-kilometer trend that's been identified, and right now we have resources covering about 10% of that strike, only over about 500 meters. So we're excited to get back underground there and start developing that and opening up that resource, because we think the potential to grow that resource is huge. Right now, we're sitting with over 300,000 tons at Goodell in the indicated category at over 8 grams per ton gold. And we don't have the same silver credits at Goodell. Silver at Goodell is very low, so we're only talking gold at Goodell. And inferred, we've got 480,000 tons at 7 gram per ton for 110,000 ounces in inferred. So close to, over 200,000 ounces combined between indicated and inferred.
Great. Okay, let's talk about permitting real quick. And knowing it was a brownfield site, what kind of permits are still in place? What can you use? What do you have to permit for every year?
Well, the only permits that we have right now, we have a permit for the road going up to Mount Skookum, and we have a Class 1 permit which we obtained last year for exploration. We do not have any permits for any of the infrastructure to go and use it again. That will all be subject to a new permitting regime, I guess. So what we'll do this year is we'll get we're going to go for our Class 3 license, which will allow us to do a little bit more disturbance than we did last year. That will allow us to open up the camp. We have a camp on site that was built in 2011 by New Pacific. We'll be able to use that, which will be a lot easier and allow us to go later in the season than last year. Last year, our geologists were living in wall tents, and they'd wake up in the morning and it'd be minus 20, or there'd be a foot of snow on the ground. That was hardcore exploration for a mining engineer like me. I thought they did a pretty good job, and yeah, they managed to get our 4 holes in. But this year we'll open up the camp. We'll do a lot more extensive drilling, and at the same time, we'll be going through the process for the Class 4 permit, which will require us to get a water license, but that will allow us, give us the direction we need in order to open up the portals again, get underground, start drilling from underground, closer to the deposits, shorter holes, and allow us to do the infill drilling from underground.
Yeah. So business plan in summary is to get to 1,000,000 ounces, if I heard that correctly, over all 3 deposits. Right?
Well, that's a short term. We don't think that's the potential of the deposit, but that's a short term. That we think is a minimum, which will allow us to start looking at production scenarios. But we feel that the potential is bigger than that, of course.
Okay. And then timeline. So that's the goal for the end of the year. Is that or like what's the timeline to reach 1,000,000?
Well, we'll know at the end of this year what the timeline is going to be, because we'll do our 20,000 meter program that we're planning for this year. Most of that's going to go into Skookum Creek, and Skookum Creek is resource expansion, because the zones have been well defined to date, and we know where we want to go. But we will also drill for resources on Mount Skookum and Goodell as well. At the end of this year, we will do an update to to our 43-101 resource estimate, and hopefully that will get us closer to that 1,000,000 ounce figure and allow us to do a P. I would obviously starting with a preliminary economic assessment.
Of course. Like the best questions always come to me at the end of our conversations. But I was going to ask, like, do you have any like geophysics or MAC data or so from Skookum Creek that actually shows the potential mineralization on the other side, so it's easier for you to target, or is it just the results you got out of the drill hole that said, okay, there is mineralization there?
Oh, well, from prospecting, we have 8 to 10 showings on this property as well. Outside of our main deposits, we have potential. And I mentioned that portal from 1926. That's called the Charleston, and there have been bonanza grades, double-digit gold grades that have been chip sampled on an outcropping vein there by numerous prospectors. So what we do know is that by bringing the property together, this will be the first time that modern exploration techniques will be used on the whole property. So we will be redoing the geophysics. There was a paper done back in the 2000s that showed the magnetic susceptibility around particularly the Skookum Creek drops, as you get closer to the zone. So a magnetic survey will help us detect more of those types of deposits. And we're also looking at alteration minerals with something called a terrace spec. So we will continue with our prospecting work that we started last year, and looking for these alteration mineral identifiers, which will be indicators, which will help us to identify other potential targets as well. So the potential is very big. We don't think our geologists will ever get bored on this property.
Doesn't sound like it. No, you've got lots of targets there. And let's put a bow around it as well. Like in terms of news flow, drilling will start, as you said, in June. But what can we expect until then?
Until then, we still have some information to put out from our prospecting work last year. Some of the sampling around Charleston in particular. So there will be some news flow once we start getting those assays back from the lab. That's the main news that we have to put out. We need to finance. Once we get finance, then we'll be going in and opening up our camp, getting it set up, and then have our drillers on site early June.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, yeah.
Easy peasy. Fantastic. Awesome. Kevin, I really appreciate you joining us this morning. This was really insightful. It was a great start to catch up on Whitehorse Gold here and see where you guys are at. It's really informative. I personally love the Yukon a lot, so I hope you guys are doing good things up there. You know what? Let's talk First Nations real quick before I wrap it up, because that's really important in the Yukon. What's your relationship with the Carmacks First Nation?
Sorry, Carcross.
Oh, it's the Carmacks. Sorry. Yes,
that's
Carcross.
okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Our deposit sits on Carcross Taggers First Nation traditional territory. From day one, we have reached out to the First Nation to share our plans, discuss our plans. We hired a vice president corporate social responsibility early on. She is a born and raised Yukoner. She grew up in places like Beaver Creek and Watson Lake and Mayo. She knows the Yukon. She brings a Yukon perspective to all of our meetings. She's also married to a Tahltan First Nation, so she also brings a First Nation perspective to our meetings. And she has been working very hard to develop that relationship for us. We will not do anything up there on the land without we consider them our partners, without our partners being fully informed and being in agreement with what we're doing. We know that that's how you do business today. We know that if we go to the Yukon government for permits and we have our partners by our side, it's a technical discussion. If we don't have them by our side, we'll never win the discussion. So,
exactly. No, that's exactly it. And I think it's really, really important to have all stakeholders engaged, and really appreciate and support that as well, of course.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, let's wrap it up here. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. I think we touched on all the important points. We'll be happy to have you back maybe over the summer with some updates from the project. It would be fantastic. Yeah. And then all the best to you and good luck this year. And we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Kai.
Fantastic. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. This was SF Live episode 139 already. My name is Kai Hoffman. I'm the CEO of the Soar Financial Group. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following us. Make sure you subscribe to our channels. Either follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know like 78% of you are not subscribed to this channel that are watching, so make sure you change that. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments what do you think of the conversation. What do you think of Whitehorse Gold? Should we address anything else? And be happy to send those questions also to Kevin as well to get those answered. And make sure to follow us. Much appreciated. And